Hi there guys, it's Adam Martin here, and welcome back to another video on AMTV now, and this is something a little bit different because this took me by surprise. I think it's taken a lot of us by surprise. Now the brand has announced that they're going to be producing a new musical, specifically, now that's what I call a musical. Now, I must admit, when I first saw the reveal of this, I thought we were getting a new Now That's What I Call musical album, because we have had those before. We had one back in 2012 and one in 2014. So, you know, you could forgive anyone for thinking this was another music release, but no, they are behind a brand new musical bearing their name, their brand, their logo, everything. I mean, here's the main image from it that you can see here. I actually do like this main image, and this could definitely be an album cover, couldn't it? I mean, you've got the Now logo, as it has been since the early 90s, those big blocky text. This all looks like 20th Century Fox-esque, really, you know, those yellow, golden colours, if you like. I like the fact that the bit where it says, "That's what I call her," that's been written on. You can see that that's a cassette tape laying down, if you look at all the finer details. And again, really love that those details have been added. Clearly an 80s motif going on. You can see some headphones, like Sony Walkman-esque headphones that are hanging on the end of the word Now there, and you can see the Walkman at the bottom as well that says April and Gemma's 80s playlist. We'll get more on just what that means in a second. I also like these stripes running back here. Again, a very 80s design where these sort of stripes really brightly lit. I love the color combinations here. That's just really nice on the eyes. So overall, branding, they've done a great job with this. But, you know, a lot of the questions I'm asking and a lot of people are asking is just, what is this? Like, a musical based around Now? How does that work? Well, this is from there is a website for this, thenowmusical.com, where you can check all of this out. But it says, music from the biggest hits of the 80s. Get ready to relive the playlist of your life at the brand new British musical, Now That's What I Call a Musical. It says, celebrating 40 years of the iconic and chart-topping compilations brand Now That's What I Call Music, which have sold an estimated 200 million copies worldwide. This fun-filled evening is bursting with hits from Whitney Houston, Wham, Blondie, Tears for Fears, Spandau Ballet, and so many more. Written by award-winning comedian Pippa Evans and directed and choreographed by Strictly Come Dancing legend Craig Revel Horwood, this heartwarming and funny story takes us on an uplifting journey down memory lane. It's Birmingham, 1989. Two school friends, Gemma and April, are busy with very important business, planning their lives based on #1 magazine quizzes and dreaming of snogging Rick Astley. Cut to Birmingham 2009, and it's the most dreaded event of their lives, the school reunion. Drama, old flames, and receding hairlines come together as friends reunite, and everything from the past starts to slot into place. The biggest question is, what was with all that hairspray? So dust off your spandex, get your crimper out, and press play and record at the same time. An unbeatable soundtrack, show-stopping choreography, and an original story. Now that's what I call a musical. So, honestly, that is quite a lot to take in, bit of a whirlwind. So, what I love is it's saying it's celebrating 40 years of Now, because, of course, 2023 is the 40th anniversary. But I doubt this story is really going to be about the Now albums. I mean, how could you make a musical based around, you know, a bunch of CDs, vinyl cassettes, and all that stuff? So, going that route of, you know, a story, an actual story, and then using the music from that time, obviously makes a lot of sense. Interesting how we're starting in 1989. I would have thought they would have started maybe in 1983, which is the year that Now begun. But I guess 89, you know, cassette players were a lot more commonplace then. Now had already become an established brand. They are using songs from the 80s as the basis of this musical, so setting it, or setting at least part of it at the end of the 80s makes sense, because you're giving yourself the biggest scope to draw tracks from. Big names behind this as well. Pippa Evans, as it says, is an award-winning comedian. And Craig Revel Horwood, I mean, what can you say about him? As he says, he's been a judge on Strictly Come Dancing forever. He's well known in the dancing scene, you know, for his choreography and all sorts. He's also directing this one, which I find really interesting. And at the bottom there, it just says, Now is produced by Royo, Universal Music UK, Sony Music Entertainment, and Mighty Village, and celebrates 40 years of Now That's What I Call Music. Now, before we delve more into the aspects of the musical itself, I just want to address a few things. I know a lot of people were probably surprised at this. This isn't what they were expecting from Now. I think a lot of people were hoping for a Now That's What I Call, you know, 40 years album, whether that's a vinyl, CD, or cassette release. And I think that still might happen. You know, I'm recording this in early October of 2023. The anniversary technically falls towards the end of November. So I think there's still potential to get a Now 40 years album of some sort. But this was a mega surprise release. I had no idea that a musical, of all things, would be coming. But before I talk about my thoughts on the show and whether or not it has any chance to succeed or not, let's just check out the rest of the website. You have this odd thing. One of the tabs at the top says the video. So sing along with the songs that made the 80s awesome. And there's a little old TV here that says April and Gemma's 80s playlist. Now, when you actually click on it, It's a bit random, really. All it does, as far as I can see, is it swoops in with a cassette tape, and it has the date of the 6th of October 2023, 9:30 a.m., and that's it. So I'm not quite sure if we're expecting more, if more's meant to happen here, if that's when a trailer's dropping. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I was a little confused at that one. The musical tour, as you can see, there are several places where it's available. Some tickets are available to book now. Other tickets are not on sale yet. They'll be on sale soon. But just to quickly breeze through, this tour starts in September next year, September 2024. Ironically, on the 41st year of now. And at the minute concludes in April of 2025. So this is a big tour. And just running through, it's going to Aylesbury, Sheffield, Canterbury, Nottingham, Norwich, Newcastle, Bradford, Dartford, Cardiff, Hull for Cornwall, Milton Keynes, Belfast, Southampton, Manchester, Hull, Southend, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Liverpool, Birmingham, York, Oxford, Bristol, and the new Wimbledon Theatre. So this is going to a lot of places. So if you're into this, then there's a good high chance that you'll be able to catch this show. And these are many different venues of various sizes, but they'll be hoping for packed audiences, as you would for any show. Now for the team, as you can see, they've gone with, now this is what I call a creative team. I wonder how long it took the designers to think of that one. But as you can see, we have Pippa Evans here as the writer. There they are. And then Craig Revel-Horwood, the director and choreographer. Really interested to see how Craig directs this. Big surprise he's directing and choreographing. That's nice to see. You have Tom Rogers and Toots Butcher, who are the set and costume designers. Ben Cracknell, who is the lighting designer. Sam Cox, the wigs and hair designer. Aaron Renfrey, who's the associate choreographer. Mark Crossland, the musical supervisor and arranger, Adam Fisher on sound design, and Anneli Powell, who is the casting director. So they've already got a team together, which is quite good. They've got a team, they've got a premise, they've got a concept, but the age-old question is, will this work? Now, setting it in the 1980s, at first I was a bit, not disappointed, but a bit nonplussed. As someone who's an actor myself, but also someone who works at a theatre from time to time, both behind and in front of the scenes, I see a lot of 80s shows come through, a lot of touring 80s shows, and that could be stuff with a story, that could be tributes. There is a lot of 80s content out there, and don't get me wrong, they do well. Like at our theatre, whenever they come in, they sell out, like 80s Live, or tributes where the bands are 80s themed, for example. They will always do well. I mean, the 80s music scene is a golden age, in my opinion. There's a reason it is so beloved and still gets a lot of traction today, still gets a lot of love. I do think going with 80s pop is a bit of a safe option because, yes, whilst Now did start in the 80s and had that initial rise in that decade, it's gone on to transcend so much more than that. It's spanned decades, the 90s, the noughties, the 10s, even the 20s. And not just pop either, multiple genres, especially whilst, yes, by the end of the 80s, it was still just doing the numbered line, focusing on the mainstream charts. But if you're celebrating 40 years of Now, then what about that whole brand as a whole? All those genres it's tackled, and I'm not saying you work all of those into a musical because that'd be a mess, but I think sticking strictly with 80s mainstream pop, whilst a safe option is a bit, I don't know, a little bit underwhelming, maybe. I'm not saying that means it'll be bad, not by any means, but I'm curious to see how the songs work into it. I do think the timing is interesting as well. Whilst they've announced this a year in advance of the first show, which is happening in September next year, bear in mind in November of this year, we're getting I Should Be So Lucky, which is another musical featuring 80s music, the music of Stock, Aitken and Waterman, and that'll be going on tour from November and into next year as well. So again, this is another show with a story, a feel-good story using very popular 80s music. I believe I Should Be So Lucky should be wrapped up, at least at the minute, by the time Now goes on tour. So again, I'd like to think maybe they won't clash, but I do worry that if we get more shows like this that follow that same vein of like general feel-good story with 80s pop music in the background, a sort of risk of maybe oversaturation, because there are other shows as well that have come and gone over the years. One that springs to mind, Club Tropicana, I know that was on a few years ago, that used 80s music as its basis, and there are others as well. So whilst I do think Now has an advantage being, the brand that it is, the Now brand is a big one. It's one that, millions of Brits have become accustomed to over the last 40 years. I do think that'll pull in a great deal of people. I do wonder just how well this musical will actually perform in terms of like ticket sales and whether, will the tour be extended beyond 2025? I'm not so sure. But one thing they have going for them, they have the Now brand, They have clearly some big tunes coming, and they also have some big names in the team, namely the writer of Pippa Evans and Craig Revel Horwood, who is directing and being the choreographer. Massive names behind this project. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say I want this project to fail. As someone who works in the industry as an actor, I would love every new musical to succeed. I'd love for every show to be sold out. I'd love for them to have a great time, for it to get rave reviews, all that sort of stuff. And believe me, I'll be keeping an eye out on the casting websites, because if they announce that they're looking for people, I would definitely put myself forward if there was a role suitable. You know, I definitely want to be involved in this show. I just worried, I guess, initially from that initial release when reading about the story and then the use of 80s music and stuff, it just sounded a bit familiar to me. It might be the best 80s story-based musical I've ever seen. I guess we'll have to wait until next year. But yeah, that's mainly what I wanted to talk about, just the announcement of Now's brand new musical. I don't know if any of us ever saw this coming, how they were going to do it, but hey, they've done it, and it's coming to a theatre near you in 2024 and 2025. But that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe to us as well, and let me know down in the comments, are you excited for the Now musical? Were you surprised as I was? Are you excited? Are you inspired by the story? Do you think it's going to be really good? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. In the meantime, I've been Adam Martin from AMTV Now. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time for another spin on the turntable.